Here we go with a slightly different video format for me. There's not going to be a ton of shooting. I will work in some footage throughout this video to illustrate, but the purpose of this video is to give you a rundown of the new Shooters Global Pulse Pro level and onboard data card, and then give you my thoughts and experiences around running this. So before we start, SG sent this unit out to me. They said, hey, we've got this new product. Would you like to run it on your channel? Provide a look at the unit for your viewers. And I said, heck yes, I would love to do that. So thank you to SG Pulse for sending this out for me to get my hands on. Now with that, if you watch this video and you find yourself interested in picking up one of these SG Pulse Pros after this video, you can use the link in the description below, as that does give me a little bit of a kickback that I use to help grow this channel. Now with that out of the way, what are we working with? Well, the SG Pulse Pro is kind of the next iteration of the original SG Pulse. Now what these are, electronic onboard levels or anti-cant devices for your rifle. The original SG Pulse just kind of gave you red, green, and blue lights to tell you if you were canted. The Pro model, however, includes an onboard screen and much bigger indicator lights. So with that, you put this unit on the rifle. You can either mount it horizontally or you can mount it vertically. It'll auto compensate for that. And then around the edge of the unit, you're gonna have your indicator lights. So first and foremost, this would be an anti-cant device. And I love anti-cant devices because they are so sensitive. They're much more sensitive and repeatable than a bubble. Now with that, on this unit, you can actually go in and program the sensitivity. So maybe you're shooting ELR and you can only accept plus or minus 0.5 degrees. So tiny error to be level. You can go in and program that in this unit. Maybe you're shooting a carbine up close, 300 to 500 yards. You don't need to be as precise. You can accept plus or minus 2 degrees. You can set that up so that your green level indicator is different based on what you're doing. Now the other thing, on the side of the unit, there actually are 3 buttons. Now you can use these buttons to control this unit and maybe make those adjustments that I just mentioned. The center button is what you're going to use to select functions with. Tap it once to select, press and hold to go back. And then on the top and bottom, you have 2 buttons that you would use to toggle between your different options. So as I go through this, this will pair with the app on your phone. There's a Shooter Global app that this works with, or you can use the onboard buttons for certain settings. Now, let's dig into some of the deeper functions of the unit. I believe this makes sense for match shooters for several different reasons. And in fact, when this landed, the very next day I took it out to a match to run. Not only is it going to provide anti-cant for me, but it's got an onboard data card. So with the data card function, you can load in something like 100 different targets. So in my match, I had the stage booklet ahead of time, and I was able to go into this unit through the app and load in the different stages I was going to shoot, each of those targets, my elevation hold and my windage hold, as well as the target distance. And then when I was on the clock, I was able to use the top and bottom buttons to toggle through them. It actually worked very, very well. The only thing I noticed was on the clock, I wasn't really used to it, so for me it was a little bit slow. The way I ran it would be dial on my rifle for my first target, set my second target up in the Pulse Pro, so that when I was transitioning, all I had to do was glance down and see what that number was, dial it, and send it. So the onboard data card function is actually epic. Now maybe you're thinking you don't shoot matches, maybe you don't need a data card. We can use this data card for other things, and the way that I used it, within that first level, you can name things. They don't have to be named targets. You can name it, for example, MPBR for max point blank range. So that's a function where you need to know the distance that you can shoot out to with that number. You need to know the elevation hold to be able to do that. You need to know a mil reading that is your go number. So there's a couple of different things. So within this data card, I was able to label it as MPBR for max point blank range. For the elevation number, I put in the elevation hold that corresponds with that. For the target distance, I put in the max distance where that would work. And then for windage, I put in the mil reading that is my go number. So once you kind of understand how the data card works, you can get very creative. I was also able to load in my speed drop number for a 6.5 Creedmoor. So speed drop, I labeled it, SPD, DRP, or something like that. So speed drop. And speed drop works out to a certain distance based on your parameter. So you're able to load in maybe what that far distance is for your speed drop. And then in the elevation, I was able to put my speed drop number so that I knew what to subtract off of my distance after I milled a target. So not only is this going to work for the match shooter engaging multiple different targets, it can also work for the practical shooter out here in practical type scenarios. Now, for the match shooter, you're on the clock, you need a timer. Boom, this unit has a timer built in. So in my match, I was shooting 105-second stages. I was able to program in 105 seconds. And then when I was on the clock, I just tapped the center button, boom, and you can begin the timer. Also, you can set where this will beep at you. So if you want to beep, say 15 seconds before time is up, the unit will beep at you, and it will beep, say, at the end of your time. So as far as a match device, this thing is amazing. Anti-cant, data card, onboard timer, so that you know where you're at. Now the features don't stop there. Now the other thing that you can do with this, there's an onboard accelerometer, or how stable are you in a position. So maybe you're trying to shoot 1 MOA groups. You can go into the stability portion of this unit and get a look at how steady this unit is on your rifle. If your rifle's moving around, it's going to give you a graph of what that movement looks like. Maybe you're shooting positional. It's going to give you a look at what your muzzle is doing and what your expected accuracy is. Very, very handy function for the positional type shooter. Maybe you're trying to do work to improve your positional shooting. This will give you a real-time look at that. So there's a ton of functions. Those are the main things I've used in this unit, and that's where I find the value in this unit. Now, as far as how you keep it powered up, on the back side there is a charging port here. So there's a magnetic charger. It is not USB-C. It is unique to this unit. And I tell you what, that is one of the negatives. I wish this was just USB-C. And the other negative is, if you have a standard SG Pulse, it's not the same charger. This is a smaller charger than this one. So even though I have both units, I can't run the charger universally. This one has its own charger. So it charges, and it's held charge well longer than a day of shooting. But I tell you what, I wish it was USB-C. Maybe the other negative that I found would be the size. If you look at the standard SG Pulse, this thing is tiny compared to what the Pro is. The Pro is not obnoxious, and the Pro, you know, it sits in your line of sight, but I love the size of the standard. I understand why the SG Pulse Pro has to be the size that it is, but I almost wonder, does it need all of the indicator lights around the edges? Could they slim this up? But I tell you what, as it is, it's usable. You kind of get used to it. Maybe you're going to run this on one dedicated rifle. You don't want to have to reach up and engage these buttons with your offhand. Maybe you want to use your trigger finger. Well, the SG Pulse Pro actually has the ability to add a remote switch that gives you the ability to run these 3 functions, say from your trigger finger. It also gives you the ability to run cables up to the ocular on your scope and give you a red, green, and light right there on your ocular in your eye so that you don't have to look down and see what this unit is doing. I opted not to install those on my rifle because I'm constantly moving these around and I didn't want to have to move those cables around, but maybe those would be valuable to you. They would be very, very handy. That remote switch kind of right there under your trigger finger, start that timer, boom, good to go. So that's a rundown on the SG Pulse Pro. At this point, I've been able to run it for several weeks now. I can confidently say the battery lasts long enough for well over a day of shooting. The data card is intuitive. The app is easy to understand to load that data in. The anti-cant level, easy to see, very, very sensitive. I really like how nice and repeatable it is, and the ability to fine-tune what the measurement for the lights are. You know, this unit, again, if you find yourself interested, really the only downside versus the standard Pulse would be the size and the price. This unit's about $200 more expensive than the standard SG Pulse. The standard Pulse, about $130, the Pro model, about $330, but you are getting quite an increase in capabilities there. So with that, as I mentioned, if you find yourself interested in SG products, use the link in the description below, as those will navigate you over to their website. Purchases you make through my link will give me a small kickback that I'll use to grow this channel. Short video here, sweet and to the point. Hopefully it gives you a look at how the new SG Pulse Pro performs. Let me know in the comments down below what you think. Would you like to see me do anything else with the SG Pulse Pro? Help me grow this channel liking, commenting, and subscribing. Thanks for watching.